I'm standing here on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. with, as you can see behind me, the Washington Monument. Ordinarily, the Washington Monument is a mecca for tourists who come to Washington, but they won't be touring the Washington Monument today because as we tape this, the government has begun its partial shutdown, and all national parks and most monuments are closed, including the Washington Monument. We had another shutdown, of course, back in 1995-96. We've updated a couple of attitudinal measures to see how the public's perception now compares to what the attitudes were back then. One question is this a matter of principle on both sides, or are the sides that are fighting mainly fighting for political gain? Well, rather cynically, the American public tilts by 10 points towards saying that the parties here in Washington are focused on political gain, not principle. You see the numbers there in front of you. 47% an attempt by both sides to gain political advantage, and 37% an important battle over principles. When we go back to 1995, data were quite similar. Remarkably, the cynical response was a little higher back then, but not that much. So the same level of cynicism that pertained back in 95 is also evident now when we ask Americans about the current shutdown. Political gain, who is acting more responsibly, President Barack Obama or the Republicans in Congress? Now, we asked that question back in 95 and, of course, substituted President Bill Clinton for President Barack Obama. Back then, based on the timing of the poll, because we asked the question numerous times back then, Bill Clinton always was ahead of the Republicans in Congress, and now President Obama comes out ahead of the Republicans in Congress on that forced choice, not by a lot, by 5 points. 40% say Obama is acting more responsibly. 35% say the Republicans in Congress are acting more responsibly. So Obama has a slight edge on that question at this point. We'll see where this ends up. As I'm standing here right now, it's unknown how long this shutdown may go on. We did do an analysis here at Gallup.com of the long-term impact of the last shutdown. And my colleague Elizabeth Mendez found that after about 6 months or so, into 1996, there really wasn't a lot of change. President Clinton's approval rating had stayed the same. Newt Gingrich's favorable rating had stayed the same. Satisfaction with the way things are going in the country had stayed the same, and so on. So long term, it didn't look like on some key indicators that the shutdown then had a major impact. But again, every year is different. Every situation is new, and we'll have to wait and see what happens as a result of this shutdown. Here on the Washington Mall, fairly deserted Washington Mall, as a matter of fact, in Washington, D.C., I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.